All right, let's get into the list of matches right here, and well, great song to start off with because the first one on here is the triple threat match for the women's championship at WrestleMania. It was Charlotte versus Sasha Banks versus Becky Lynch. When I started doing this list, I actually didn't have this on here at first, but I thought there needed to be at least a representative of WrestleMania, and it really wasn't a great WrestleMania this year. A lot of injuries, a lot of stuff kind of really derailed the show, and then how they recovered to it and everything, I don't know, it just didn't really pan out. The only other notable match was the 8-man ladder match for the Intercontinental title that opened the show. That was a great match. I actually had it just outside the list here, but as far as to kick off the list, number 25, I went with that match because that was the best match on the card, the triple threat women's match. And they were featured. A lot of the stuff leading up to it, they were talking about how they were front and center of the poster outside of the Dallas Stadium, and they really delivered. You could say, about the finish, kind of with Ric Flair getting involved, but that was kind of the storyline at the time, and it was a great match, and I think that definitely deserves some notoriety, and so that kicked off our list, number 25. Number 24, we have another women's match. It's Bayley going against Asuka the day before the Triple Threat women's match at TakeOver Dallas. That was the match where Asuka won the title. Kind of figured that was going to happen coming in. Bayley was kind of wrapping up things in NXT. She would end up being there for a little while longer after that, but as far as her being the top women there, it was Asuka's time, timed out perfectly. It was a great match, and Asuka continues to be the champion and could be going into the next WrestleMania season. She's being really dominant, and that's where her title reign started, so that was 24. Number 23, we have American Alpha versus The Revival at TakeOver The End. This match, this is the one where American Alpha had beaten The Revival for the titles at the previous TakeOver. Maybe it was on a taping. But going into this one, they were having a rematch, and kind of going into it, I think most people figured that American Alpha was going to retain. They had just won it. They didn't really have the titles for that long, and this was a great match. And I think it was a pretty surprise finish where the Revival ended up winning the titles. It was a great finish, countering the finishers and everything. And so I think that surprise factor really bumped it up, but it was still a great match, and I think that deserves to be put on this list here. Number 22, we have Dean Ambrose versus AJ Styles versus John Cena in a triple threat match for the WWE Championship at No Mercy. And if you remember that this was the one that opened the pay-per-view, it was it the first? I think it was the first SmackDown only pay-per-view of the year. It was either this or Backlash. It was this one. And they opened up, this is kind of the weird pay-per-view structure where the main event was Orton and Bray Wyatt, which is weird because they also had another match, which is going to be later on our list on that card, even higher than this one. That should have closed the show, but as far as opening the show with a title match, that was great, and I think that was it was a great match anyway, but I think it being positioned as the opening match, I think that deserves some notoriety and kind of something to look back for on the year where that made an impact, that match. Number 21, we have Asuka versus Mickie James at NXT TakeOver Toronto. And this is the return of Mickie James after 6 years. Asuka been going on a tear, and saying there's nobody's ready for Asuka except for Mickie James. She was, and we hadn't seen her for a long time. She was always great. She's one of my favorites, definitely during her run. She came out with a bang, beat Trish and Lita, and then had a great run. And then we hadn't seen her for a long time. She was in TNA, and then she was married and had a baby just before this, and she came back looking in like best shape, the greatest shape of her life, and she looked great. She wrestled great, didn't look like she missed a beat. Hung with Asuka, had some pretty good near falls and everything, and hung with her, but Asuka too dominant. But that was a great matchup. It was just a great use of Mickey, and that one thing that the NXT shows do. Just have a featured match. Didn't even need much of a build. It's just a legend in the women's wrestling going against the current, top woman, and just putting together a great match. And that's what it was. And so I really enjoyed it. And number 20, we had T.J. Perkins versus Kota Ibushi, and this was in the Cruiserweight Classic semifinals. Wow, the Cruiserweight Classic, what a concept that was. Produced a ton of great matches, got a lot of signees out of it. And this was kind of one of the matches we could see kind of possibly happening as the bracket was coming to fruition. And so this was one of the semifinal matches, and it was a great match. It was TJ Perkins really broke out. I think a lot of us knew Kota Ibushi really well. I was a huge fan of him once I started watching New Japan. I've only been watching New Japan for a couple of years, and wow, Ibushi has been one of my favorites the whole time. I was shocked to see him be in the WWE. And then TJ Perkins, I've known as when he was Suicide and Manic and stuff, but never seen him kind of wrestle without a mask and had his own personality and persona. And he really emerged during this tournament, I believe. Ibushi we knew was going to be there, and these guys put on a hell of a match. TJ Perkins ended up winning and going to the finals, which was kind of a shock. It was just great. One of the best matches of the Cruiserweight Classic, and that was number 20 on our list.